Childhood friends always bring the feels, a little bit of the truth, and a touch of the dirt. Mark Hannigan, fellow Gen Xer from Granite City, grew up a grinder over on East 27th Street. That's street, not court or lane or boulevard. He grew up in a mixed-race house that resulted in him being the, quote, little white kid dancing all weird at the Mexican Honorary Club. He has been navigating parenthood, traveling union gigs, jiu-jitsu, sandwich shop searching, all while running an independent business in a neighboring city that provided a getaway from some of the chaos and predictability of his hometown. Let's go.
You're probably like, what the fuck was that about?
No, it's you going through the process.
The process.
And I assume you're still kind of learning on the job here and figuring out what works, what doesn't, kind of how to angle things. And
Well, I've been learning on the job for 15 years.
Sure.
I don't know. I think I have, adult ADHD. I don't think I had it as a kid, honestly. I feel like I was pretty focused. Like I wasn't really I didn't get distracted easily.
No, you didn't seem to, but you're also very engaging and very energetic is my memory. So whenever you got into stuff like just having a casual conversation with you wasn't difficult, but you would engage and challenge.
Well, I should have you on more often because most people categorize me as annoying and an asshole in the early years.
Well, at least we're same on that one.
Damn.
I'm still categorized that way. My wife was very glad I get to come talk to you because I just talk too much in general, apparently. So it's.
Are you one of those people that sit around the house and just did you know? Did you know? Did you know?
If it's.
What did you do today?
Right.
Really?
Right. And then
are you
say something, I'm going to probably engage and then ask more, and then that's usually a deterrent to a lot of people. They just want to say something right and not expound on it or delve into it.
Well, it's funny you say that because the other day I was having a conversation with somebody and they were talking and I'm paying attention, but something in me was like, you know what? This isn't really the time to dig into it or make it deep. So I kind of responded with, oh yeah, that's interesting. I don't even really remember the full context. But I do remember them being like, that's it? Like, are you even paying attention? And I won't say who it was because I live with her. So
I understand.
But what I was saying though is ADHD as an adult for me, and I'm not a psychologist. That's me not self-medicating, but diagnosis. Thank you. To the point where learning how to do any of this, all of this, it's YouTube. I think info or access to info or access to learn how to do shit is so easily achievable. I just get bored and I find other things interesting. So it's like, oh, that's cool. Kind of like with music, right? Always grew up around music. Dana and Ryan played it all the time. Dana made it a career. And so when we opened Gaslight, it was I remember a multitude of people, whoa, what do you know about recording music? I'm like, jack shit. But there's YouTube. And there's other people that know how to hit the button, so I'll pay them. So
sure, but you also have to have somebody who has a vision and then has some drive. You have to have, somebody who is on point, basically, and leadership is also being able to garner enough people around you to help lift that up and engage. But without that person, it can get listless pretty quickly, in my opinion, and there's no direction, so people just kind of start splintering off. You have to have somebody at the core to kind of drive everything together. If you will, you have to be that carbon atom.
That's deep.
It's just...
I like that. Carbon atom. Do you split? Do you view that as if you're really kind of the center of something, it's important to split and give or grow or both?
You're a bonding agent, right? I mean, you're not necessarily the driving, how do I describe it? But you're sort of the catalyst. So things are going to form around you and bond to you, but it's important if it's a single bond, double bond. It just depends on how many chains you want to put together, how many elements you can chain together. And this is if you're at the national level, you are a giant carbon molecule, basically, or atom, but you basically have a lot of people attached to you. So you just get organism level as opposed to a molecule.
So you're a small business owner.
Yeah.
You have a family. You have kids. Do you operate those environments in kind of that mindset?
I try to a degree. You got it, give and take, right?
Yeah.
Ebb and flow. I mean, nothing that I've ever seen or experienced in my life is a straight line. Most things up and down. You have troughs, you have peaks. So it's important to recognize those. And in my opinion, the idea is to not be erratic, but to have them smooth. So instead of a precipitous up and down, you are more, right? More of a smooth wavelength, if you will.
Yeah.
As opposed to erratic free particles, right?
I like that. But you know what's weird though? Like self-reflection, that is the right term. I've realized that I do like chaos at times.
Have to have it.
Like the what you were just describing, that smooth roll, the the analogy that I would use is deep sea fishing. That's our new family hobby. We love it.
I've seen you posted it. Yeah, seems like you really enjoy it.
Freaking love it. Knock on wood, 4 of us don't get seasick, so that makes it really easy.
Yeah.
But you do challenge yourself on the days where that smooth rolling, 30-mile-per-hour run turns into just a hull beating, bash your knees head. And I get like this weird tingle out of those days too. And I use it as a metaphor. Like I think about it often because obviously we were just talking about it before we started here. Chaos within my world in particular, losing both parents and then losing both brothers. Those are wave crashing, crushing events. And I don't know, I think that it's those types of events and not just the bad ones, the great ones too. For example, Keller, my oldest, we're friends on social. You see, he's the musician. He's down at Belmont.
Yep.
The day we got the SLU High annual magazine, which is the Time magazine of the year when it comes to high school. So he's on the cover. And so it's like that wave that crashed with that big endorphin rush.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see a lot of difference between, for me, and I don't know, maybe this is something a psychologist should break down for me. I don't emotionally react much different, like what I feel in my gut, the reaction to negative and the positive. So the question to you is, because you seem super zen, and I think based on what I see, through exercise and all these other activities, as well as being a small business owner and knowing enough about your family background and everything else, you've really kind of been, you delve into a lot, right?
I attempt to.
What's your North Star?
Good question. If I may back up 1 second,
Yeah.
Chaos and order, right? The two supreme forces in the universe. Chaos is always trying to disrupt order. Order is always trying to impose itself on chaos. And like you said, there's positive and negative experiences all in between. So that high-low wave thing that we're talking about, again, variables that are unaccountable come out of nowhere. You know that there are eventualities. People are going to pass away. People are going to get sick. There's going to be car wrecks. There's going to be things you have to contend with. And those can throw people for a curve. I saw gaslight for you as chaos that you turned into order. You were able to take something that was a tragedy, but was inevitable, your parents passing, maybe untimely, sure. But you took that and you bonded with your brothers and you made something bigger and better than yourself.
Yeah, the bonding took a while. Because in true Anderson Brothers style, early on, not much bonding going on there.
No, but that's the chaos.
There was excommunication that was occurring.
That's the chaos, though. And then you guys are trying to figure out order. So first of all, you have to figure out who goes where, who does what, right? Yeah. And you're the older brother. So this is always going to be difficult for you because you're going to be in a leadership role primarily, but you cannot suppress your younger brothers or siblings or your kids or your wife just to further empower yourself or, just to, because you know best, right? Because we all have blind spots. So you have to be aware that, first of all, you have blind spots, right? And it's just going to be something you have to deal with. So if somebody can make sense, then okay.
Yeah, to your point, like I specifically remembering the need to step on the throttle heavy in pushing gaslight. And Ryan was always like, yeah, sounds cool, let's do it, whatever, right? He didn't really put an X's and O's process into making decisions. Dana was like, I think he was irritated. No, I think he was sad because he really, in hindsight, needed mom and dad more than we thought he did. But he saw it as his world, that being music.
Yes.
And so I think he viewed it as a form of imposter syndrome on my part, right? And really, in hindsight, I was yeah, I like the money investment side of it. That's just kind of nature.
Absolutely.
But I really wanted him to thrive, And so anyway, to the point, what we're talking about, like North Star is where I started.
Yeah.
I kind of I don't think I have a North Star. And I think I have stars, depending on the mood.
Absolutely.
Laying on your right side at night. Do you lay on your right or left side at night when you sleep?
I toss and turn.
Are you a tosser? Where do you start?
Back.
You stare. I can't do that.
I just start up and then I just
If I'm on
left
my
and right.
if I'm on my back, my wife's like, no. So
As far as I know, I don't snore, so it's not a problem if I'm on my back. But I'm a restless person. I'm a restless sleeper in general, because I do physical activities and stuff. My wife, I literally knocked her out of bed one night because, dumb story, we were working triangle chokes and jiu-jitsu, and I actually upkicked the ceiling fan. And when I came down, she bounced out of the bed. I was completely asleep when it happened. But
that's a little crazy.
it is a little crazy. So I just find that I left and right, I just rotate. But that, again, left and right, I mean, these are definitive, to go back to like R&D, not to bring it all into, but this whole ideology of like one over the other. There's a lot of constellations to look at. And some of them are even different in the Southern Hemisphere than the Northern Hemisphere. So, ideology is tricky. You need some sort of ideology to anchor you. Otherwise, again, listless, right? There's no rudder. The ship's just going to blow in the breeze. But to be too rigid means you're going to take a defensive position, because you're going to have to defend that ideology. And the minute you get stagnant is the minute that you can get swarmed from all sides. So if you're not flexible, and if you cannot adapt, then all is lost, in my opinion. Eventually, you will succumb to the waves.
So what kind of person are you drawn to then? Because
everybody.
But okay.
Okay.
It's the desert island
Sure.
quiz. Because you clearly have a lot of self-reflection.
I try to.
Well, I can already tell, and listeners can tell within the first few minutes here, way more than most. Probably to a huge benefit to your own psyche. Well, let me just ask this then. What type of individual are you drawn to? Are you drawn to individuals that appear to be more chaotic, a little bit more erratic, maybe a little bit more flash and bluster? Or are you drawn more to more of a Zen, Buddha, center line individual? Do you ever think about that? Do you ever reflect on who you are drawn to?
I do. I'd ask the same question to you after I answer this one, but
Yeah.
I find myself, I'm often accused of being devil's advocate, but what I also find is I'm just kind of contrarian. In general, again, just middle of the road, Midwesterner, moderate, value family, friends, relationships. I value quiet. I invite, if you want to argue, I'm definitely for argument. What I don't really like is just idleness and not moving the ball forward or even backward. But if it's just stagnant, so usually, much like you, I like an energetic person. I view you as, and this is just like my past reference to what I've seen.
Sure.
Is if I was on a desert island, I would like to have JB Anderson. I know I'm going to have good conversation.
Debate.
I know that we're going to get some fish. We're going to eat. There's going to be priorities. Right. We're not just going to be sitting around. We'll probably knock down a few palm trees if there's some and make some instruments. We're going to find something to do. We're going to make a ball out of a coconut.
Got to figure out how to make bourbon.
We can find a way to distill something, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, right.
We're going to find a way to desalinate some water. We're going to find ways to do things that we can to, again, progress in some facet or another. Just kind of the woe is me and sitting around and waiting for the rescue crew to come.
Okay, so let me interject real quick and follow-up question.
Sure.
How do you react to individuals that do not have outward drive or maybe appear to be listless, right? As you said, are you drawn to engage and advise, or is it more avoid and have apathy?
Oh, that's interesting. To quote you earlier, not apathy, but you only have so much time, right? And this is something like, I don't know about you, but I've been feeling much more, especially since I hit 40.
Don't That was a long time ago, dude.
It truly was. But
I mean,
but the clock started running differently. Physical attributes start diminishing at a rapid rate, right? So you're starting to realize like you're probably not going to get much stronger, faster. You know, things are going to start declining. It's important to preserve those things. So again, kind of a mix. If people want to engage and they want to do things, but I'm done with trying to drag people. Right, like, hey, you need to do this, or we should try this, or if you don't find interest in it, or you don't want to do it, then
doesn't the contrarian in you? Because it sounds as if we kind of have similar maps within our brains. Doesn't the contrarian in you, or really the desire to discuss / debate? Do you find yourself maybe trying to push more out of those individuals?
Yeah, for sure.
So here's a question, and I'm asking for myself. Do you feel that is warranted, or is that a little arrogant, or is it a little bit of both?
It's both for sure. It would, based on kind of what you're saying, if I'm reading you correctly, it would kind of infer that I know, and that's the egotistical, arrogant part of it. But again, the human side of me is like human potential is one of the most important things, and being able to get people that are kind of passe or not fully engaged, but like riling them up.
Yeah.
Right. Like challenging them. Like, oh, like you seem pretty passive about your answer, but what if I put it in this context and now I'm overbearing and I'm coming at you? Usually you'll find them get defensive, which is fine. And they tend to get a little more aggression, which I think is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we conflate fighting and arguing. And I've noticed this has been something that's come up. Again, I don't want to go super political when I read it, but just in general, people have an aversion to conflict.
I love politics.
It's just conflict in general. And
right.
It's just one arena is right, politics. But we tend to want to believe that we are right and we're justified. And then when you get challenged, people think you're trying to fight with them. So there's an escalation of emotion instead of an escalation of logic.
Well, let's scoot the Venn diagram on top of each other. You just kind of had an aha moment. You talk about we both turned 40 at the same time, right? I don't find it a coincidence that
you definitely turned 40 before me.
I'm 75. I'm pretty sure I didn't. I think I was the puppy of the age group. At least of the three of us, me, you, and Josh, back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah.
Okay, so we turned 40 roughly in 2015, right?
Yeah.
And kind of in line with, again, overlapping context. We were talking about confrontation and debate and conversation and alluded to politics, et cetera. And, the second half of our life in which things start to diminish, but probably we take an overly active approach or attempt to be more mentally engaged, to fill in the gap for maybe some of the physical deficiencies or, the dropping off. It's just true. I mean, not as much for you because you clearly are more fit and still working out, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But do you find it funny, just kind of in reflecting? In 2015, Trump comes down the escalator and completely changes national narrative, not just political narrative.
No, you're right.
Complete narrative within households, businesses, communities, cultures, and then obviously, ultimately, on the ballot. 9 years into it, and now we're entering into here around the corner, the second Trump term. Are we better off for it? Are we? I think I know the answer, but are we communicating better, worse? Is it yet screaming into the void? Is it communicating in the void? Where's your mind on just kind of a 10,000-foot view of the last 9 years and our ability to just have a conversation like this?
Sure. I think Trump is a backlash to the woke culture, if you will. He's a backlash to, it's going to be Obama in particular, which seems like it kind of set off Trump quite a bit, especially with like the birther movement, which is kind of interesting in itself. And then supposedly, and again, you probably know more about this than I do, but at like a correspondence dinner, Obama started basically roasting Trump and challenged him.
Oh, yeah.
And challenge accepted. Trump said, okay, like I think I can play this game. And what he has done is tapped into something that's probably been suppressed. There's like the toxic masculinity going on, the feminine movement, which is important and awesome. I have 2 daughters. But it's, and also...
And sisters.
And sisters. sort of like the identifying factor of crazy immigration, which we can get into that because it's required. People can try and avoid it all they want, but demographically, if we don't do something,
We're in big trouble.
big trouble.
Yeah.
So, these are things that he was able to tap into the populist movement, in my opinion, and he kind of like reinvigorated like the classic male model in America.
Isn't it funny that now in hindsight, everybody's doing a postmortem of Kamala's loss and
Sure.
his win, et cetera? Article after article after article are now pointing in the direction that the common ground is now shared between Trumpers and Sanders camp and AOC's camp. This whole true populist.
Yeah, the politics seem to point to that, right? The polling after polling, after post-election polling, I should say, seems to point to the populist movement.
Do you think, given manufacturing decline, industrial decline, all these other things, for you listeners, Mark is a fellow GC boy, 62040.
Forever.
East 27th Street, right?
East 27th.
Okay, see? I don't forget.
No, you remember.
I don't, birthday's tough for me.
I could drive to your old house, but I couldn't tell you what street it's on.
Yeah, you turn right, left, and you're there. I was having a conversation with a peer from Granite in context of what we are talking about. Do you think that Granite City is a perfect example, kind of like a microcosm of the chaos, or maybe the ignored nature of Middle America, in which those individuals that still live there in particular, they're gravitating towards that populism? Why do you think that is if you think that? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, that's fine. Again, we seem to be kind of similar mindsets overall. Background might have something to do with that. We saw some of the same things in Granite where there are 3 steel mills and now there's none.
Right.
Just factory after factory, and you could go back to East St. Louis and look at the same process. You can go back to just the general decay.
A.O. Smith.
Yeah.
All of them.
American Steel, and then Granite City Steel works, right? And then whenever, my understanding is U.S. Steel bought out Granite City Steel, whichever was owned before, that basically they lost all their pensions. So again, how much faith do you have in the system if everything you worked for is basically taken away with a purchase?
So at the time of this recording, literally this morning, I was sent a link to an article from the renowned Wall Street Journal. There was a study done, Harvard researchers, right? They decided they were going to basically look at, and I'm paraphrasing the whole thing.
Sure.
And I'll send you the link.
Okay,
and if you're listening, I'll put the link in the show notes. They decided they wanted to figure out what's going on between white America, specifically middle class white American male workers, and black American workers. And guess what county they focused on?
I'm guessing Madison County?
Madco. Madison County, Illinois. And front and center is in this article, Granite City Steel.
Wow.
And what they did is they looked at the separation or the differences between Gen X, I think 30-year-old Gen Xers versus 30-year-old millennials. And then cross tabs would be the white population versus the black population. And I found this super interesting because, as you just pointed out, all these factories, they're not there anymore. Those jobs that were low end 40, 50, high end 80 to 100, because in good years, a lot of these union workers, they can make over $100,000 a year with overtime and bonuses and everything.
Absolutely.
else.
And there's some upward mobility too. They can move into management positions,
Correct.
right? They can.
So that demo of white male that was predominantly filling those factories, that number has dropped precipitously. The counter side of it, when you look at the population, you look at the addition of jobs, what jobs are in there. They specifically looked at Pontoon Beach and all of the warehousing, Amazon.
Of course.
In which you have a higher percentage of African Americans taking the jobs as packers, drivers, etc. Now, the white male within Madison County, in this article, they point out that the average median income has dropped because you have a loss of these historically high-paying
Union jobs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they look to Madison County as a potential bright side, because the percentage increase of the African American population going from true minimum wage and or below, at poverty levels of income averages, due to these new jobs that are now $18, $19, $20 an hour, they're, from a percentage standpoint, they're exponentially greater than the percentage drop.
Sure.
And here it is. That's today's America and middle America.
Sure.
So I guess, in all of that narrative, my question is, how does it make you feel? Because I don't know how I feel about it.
Are you a globalist? So globalization, is this something you think is a good idea or concept or not?
I tend to be more of a pragmatist that really likes people.
Okay.
Okay. Scott Galloway. You know who Scott Galloway is?
A little bit.
He's
Prof G.
Prof G.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Love the Raging Moderates, by the way.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
Is it Sarah Tarltoff? Jessica Tarltoff.
Jessica.
Yeah.
She's the
unbelievable.
One. For those of you that are listening, Jessica Tarltoff is the white brunette woman that's on The Five on Fox. Yes. She's the one that typically is spewing the common sense narratives. Anyway.
And tends to reel Scott in because he can get a little out of hand sometimes, in my opinion. He just goes off the rails a little bit, but I get it. He's a very bright individual, and people may not know Galloway, but he is a New York University professor. I mean, he's...
Yeah. Well, he describes himself politically. He said it one time, and he stuck with it. He goes, I'm right of left of center.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at. So to answer your question, I'm a capitalist. I like small businesses. I like low barrier to entry. I like competition.
Yeah.
I like the stock market. I like all that.
Competition of ideas.
I love that.
Yep.
But I'm not cool with poverty. I'm not cool with public schools getting the shaft. The hill I will die on if I ever have the opportunity to figure out a way to activate is healthcare.
Yeah.
Ours is fucking broke. I've lost.
Is the healthcare broke or the people in the system broke?
The whole, yes.
Okay.
All of it.
Because before we started recording, we dived into this a little bit about lifestyle choices too, right?
Well, yes.
Okay.
So, which I think you can go root cause to, decisions or policies that add to lifestyle choices.
Absolutely.
Because the healthcare system, in hindsight, if I really wanted to point fingers, I could dissect every one of my family members' passings into a failure within the healthcare community, whether it's affordability, access, education, stigma,
self-awareness.
Yeah. It's all broke.
I mean, by even the patient, right? To be aware that you need to go see a specialist or a doctor, or because I don't know about you, but I grew up in the age where like, I'm fine. I'll put some dirt on it. No big deal. I'll be okay.
Spit and ibuprofen.
Yep. Don't be a sissy. Get back out there. The game's still going.
What's funny is my mom, she had this fear of Tylenol. It didn't matter. We could eat 2 pounds of ibuprofen in a day. She wouldn't care. But Tylenol, for some reason, she was like, no, I don't know about that.
Basically the same, right? I mean, I think ibuprofen has more fever-reducing, inflammatory aspects to it.
She's, middle America cosmetologist. She had her own theories. Hey, we'll be right back.
But she was a sweet lady.
Quick break. Right back. Okay. We're back. Little camera reset. Where were we? We were talking...
Well, initially I asked you about globalization. And then we start talking about healthcare and poverty and the things that you are for, which is capitalism, competition ideas, all nine yards.
Yeah, globalism to me is, I think that's that's a term that I believe probably is incredibly misunderstood and most of the time poorly described.
Okay.
Simplistically speaking, when I think of globalism, I think of international markets. I think of exchange of culture ideas. Through the exchange of ideas, everybody tends to make better decisions or streamlines, solves problems quicker.
You certainly have more to consider in a globalized market or world, correct?
Yeah.
Because the economic punishments that come from, and you're seeing this in my perspective again with countries with the BRICS that are starting to run away, but the sanctions, in my opinion, with Russia are starting to take hold, and people don't like globalization because it's the outsourcing or offshoring of jobs in the United States industrial manufacturing zone.
It's this faux nationalism.
It is, but people in other countries want the same things we want. They want a job. They want to be able to raise a family. They want to be able to supply a home. They want to be able to supply food. Again, medical access. The whole gambit's still there. So one of the things that I think has occurred with globalization, it's probably staved off World War III for quite some time, because if you move too far left or right, the economic punishment is enough to deter you, to bring you back into the fold.
Well,
you may make some missteps, but what will eventually happen is you will come to realization that, like, you can go out there and run around all you want, but you're going to end up back at the same table that you ran away from. So you're going to sit down and talk. It's just my 10,000 foot view.
Totally agree, because I think the expansion of globalism as it pertains to getting I'm gonna dumb this down. When you get along, right?
Yes.
When you operate in kind, when you quid pro quo, whatever the descriptor is here. When it comes to the point in which what you just you drop the words World War, when it comes to the point where war is on the table, you're a little less likely to nuke a friend, to send a missile at somebody that's like helping you fix your healthcare system or whatever it is. So this isolationist approach, I think, it's not about, they make it about jobs, but it's scary. It's really freaking scary.
It is.
So I don't know. I've had the privilege to be able to travel overseas often,
which is going to broaden your view, I would think.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, some Twain quote from a previous episode. They pointed out like the scariest thing in the world is an old man that's never traveled anywhere. That's not the right quote, but you get the gist of it.
Yes,
because they just don't understand.
Supposedly, if I may, but like in 1952, a grandfather that was 90 years old had experienced less life than his 10-year-old that was watching TV, because they're exposed to way more visually, audibly that the grandfather was if he didn't travel. And just traveling around the United States, I've been north, south, east, west. I've never left the country. But I can tell you that the diversity in this country.
Do you think that's part of the problem with Madison County? Too many people just traveling to 30A?
Well, and then you have the people that hate 30A now because they were there in the old days, the original days, and now it's all overcrowded and overpopulated. And I love 30A. I mean, go find a better beach.
Right.
I mean, it's really hard. It's pristine. It's like a freaking lake.
10-hour drive.
Yeah, and it's glass. I mean, the water's crystal clear. But everybody wants that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But but at what point does it become that you're just looking for distractions? So are you going to 30A to be on the beach? Or are you going to 30A to ride go-karts, go to the water park, and do all the other activities that cost a crap ton of money? Going to the beach is relatively cheap. It's all the other things, accessories that add to it. Again, I love fun. I love water slides. I love go-karting. I don't want to say that, but what are we looking for, and where are we going to go find it? And I think the search without is really depleting people with the search within.
So I used the term Zen earlier, loosely. And you seem to be very kind of in tune with what you were just talking about. The reason why you potentially go to the beach, I have to assume, is you probably look for some me time, right? Whether it's a chair or a blanket or whatever, it's just listening to the waves, looking or dropping in the pods, and
absolutely
just laying there, right? Have you always been that way, or what triggered it?
Growing up in Granite City, I feel like, again, maybe I'm chasing some misguided adolescence that I just didn't fulfill. Don't know. I think there's part of that, right? But I also just realized that we came from like a cookie cutter environment. Again, how far do you want to go? But you and I'll ask you about this in a minute, because it's something I needed to ask, because I've asked other people and they seem to be like completely oblivious to what I'm talking about. But it was you're gonna graduate high school. You may or may not go to college. You go to work at Granite City Steel.
Right.
You go work in some prairie farms, whatever there in the local area. You're gonna get married by the time you're like 21, 22. You're gonna have a couple kids. You're gonna live in Granite your whole life. You're gonna work at that factory your whole life. You're gonna die in Granite City happy. You're gonna be able to take a vacation, right, and afford the things you want. This is the American quote unquote dream. But it doesn't leave a lot of time for self, because basically we value work or output almost more than anything else, right? If you're not crushing it 10, 12 hours a day, but you're just not really trying. You need to take
Right.
the overtime, you need to work the shift work. And we know shift work is detrimental to mental well-being, physical well-being, just through all the studies, supposed studies that they've done.
Yeah,
Seems
it's not healthy.
It's and I've done some shift work, so flipping schedules from first to second or third, it's difficult. It takes a toll on the family, whole 9 yards. So in my 20s, I just kind of had a realization that I'm at the bar again, Jacob Myers, classic watering hole in Granite City.
Been
and
there. Few thousand.
right. And does it change?
No, it doesn't.
Or hooching 16s?
But I think that, it's funny for me, like when I go to visit like Sturtevant, or some of the last men standing, so to speak.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's a certain amount of comfort that I get when I
Absolutely.
do walk in.
Yeah.
But it's weird though, because it's completely awash in a mix of a little bit of pain, a little bit of depression, a little bit of like, I remember when. It's weird. And I think that, I hate to say it, but I feel sometimes like Granite City for me is really about how do I pull the memories out that kind of, I would like to believe, made me who I am. Because it's very frustrating, when I reflect on my brother in particular, Ryan, and what happened to him in that town. And I, and there's a ton of environmental factors that led to his demise. So it's weird going, in thinking about Granite City, going back to Granite City, trying to do things or reflect. Because you're in Alton, correct?
Yes, which is another Granite City, basically. I mean, they're going through almost the exact same scenario.
Yeah.
Loss of industrial manufacturing, loss of good-paying jobs, racial division. They're trying to rehab Alton with a tourist economy, basically, which, no offense to Alton, but what's in Alton? There's a river and there's some...
The problem with Alton is it's really hard to get to.
But it's bookended. It's at completely the north and I guess that'd be like the western end of the corridor. Like
Right.
you're out of the loop almost, and without 367 to connect you to St. Louis, I mean, it's a struggle. Because past Alton, there's Grafton, right, or Jerseyville in the other direction, but it's not in that 255 corridor, 270
Right. loop
that they've created to create the greater metropolitan area in general, which Eversville benefits from, and places like Belleville. And
Totally.
so it's they're struggling, but they want to bring people there, and they're trying, and that gives me hope because people actually want to try to bring something better than is currently there.
Well, I think you're a perfect example because like I told you, I don't write full sentence notes. I just have highlight
Yeah,
words. When I scroll your socials, it's almost like a predictable rotation between physical fitness and dive bar burger.
Right.
It's like, I'm like, but these things are a little bit of a dichotomy here.
The paradox of existence, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you seem to be a unofficial spokesman, for lack of a better term, for Alton, for the eateries, for the events, for the gyms, whether it's rock climbing or a grappling gym or whatever it is. Do you do that consciously?
Yes.
Or are you proud of Alton, of the things that are going on? Like, what's your mindset when it comes to highlighting these things?
I'm proud of America first and foremost, and I'm just proud to have the opportunities we have that people squander in general, in my opinion. And I can talk about all kinds of squandering I've done. And what I see in Alton is, again, people trying. They're willing to invest, and that's capitalism. You have to put time and material into it, whether it's money, whether it's, vats for brewing beer, whatever it is. You're going to have to invest something,
Old
not just
Bakery.
money. Old Bakery, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just the money. Your time, again, the most valuable thing you have. So if you're going to spend it, and I appreciate people that are willing to spend it, not just for themselves, but for the benefit of others. I tend to be a little selfish in that regard. I'm more of an individual than a group. Probably why I gravitate towards like martial arts as an individual aspect as opposed to the group.
It's not quite the team sport.
It's not, but you have to have a team to do it.
Correct.
Right? And you have to have people you can trust.
I always think of that commercial where the parents are trying to figure out what little Johnny's good at. And he gets crushed in the football field, and he's in far right field in baseball, And then all of a sudden he goes on the jiu-jitsu mat and like flips a kid, and the two parents like hug in tears of joy because he's a solo warrior.
Right, but that's the collective experience of everybody.
Right.
And I'm just going to use one of my children. My oldest, my stepdaughter, it was a little restrictive because her dad was still in the picture, so I didn't want to overstep my bounds.
Yeah.
With mine, she tried everything. We just put her in every sport. She's a competitive swimmer. She does track and field, cross country, through school, basketball and volleyball and soccer. Played a little bit of baseball. Even tried some tennis. Tried taekwondo for a minute.
Pickleball?
No pickleball yet. I'm against pickleball.
Too young.
I'm against pickleball. I just
Glorified ping pong.
It is. I appreciate that people are getting active though, and especially the older demographic seems to be going out towards these pickleball fields and really advocating for them, which is great.
Yeah, it's really going to kill our social security system. Pickleball is going to keep these people around.
living too long,
Yeah.
right?
Jesus Christ.
So, and again, I'm digressing to all kinds of things, but so
That's the point of the pod.
it is, but for Alton in particular is, and I feel like you're kind of in this vein. I see you promoting things as well, but it's if you're doing some of the things you should be doing, trying to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and all those things, you should go have a burger that's totally terrible for you, like the new one at the Old Bakery Brewery has like funnel cake on it. I mean, like it can't be good for you. Just the meat and cheese and everything else on top of it.
Yeah, and deep fried dough.
Exactly. But should you be eating those every day of the week? Probably not.
Yeah,
You should have some home cooked meals in there somewhere. Something green on your plate.
Do you get to know the people in these institutions? I mean, do you
Not a ton.
Do you go in there and eat yourself, or is this kind of like you promoting from afar?
Promoting from afar from a lot of them. Sammy's Sandwich Shop is one of the best sandwich shops I've been in the country, and I promote them because I go there like with once a week or something like
Is
that.
the proprietor Sammy?
No, it is not. It's Scott actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure why. I think Sammy's his daughter, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to lean into when I promote food, food and beverage in particular. It's usually not because of just the grub. I gravitate towards the person or the story.
Yeah.
I give you a good one. You'll like this story.
And sorry, Sammy's guy, he's the sandwich Nazi from Seinfeld. I don't want to say Nazi too much on it, but it's like he's like, he's like, what do you want?
Chips,
like,
no fries?
Yeah, like why are you here?
Yeah.
Like I don't need all the pleasantries, just tell me what you want.
Is there more than 2 sandwich options on the menu?
Quite a few more than 2, but yeah.
Okay. Well, then he's welcoming his own indecisiveness from his clientele.
He is, and he's not, he's not overly aggressive, but he's just,
Yeah.
I just like the fact that he's there to do what he loves to do, and he's not there for a bunch of frills. He's very polite. If he sees a bunch of the workers coming in, he'll walk out with a box of Little Debbie snacks and pass them out to people coming in after lunch for dessert.
Yeah, fair enough.
Especially if he recognizes you, right?
He's a dealer.
Exactly.
You give him a little taste.
Exactly. They'll come back for more.
coming back.
Exactly.
So I was going to tell you the story about food proprietor. Soccer is my passion, right? I love it.
Always.
I was at the state semifinals, Missouri State semifinals. Went to the game to support some of the coaches that I knew, some of the players I knew on the field. And Coach Gavain, who's the head coach, has been from Chaminade forever. Nickname Vader, coolest nickname ever. He's a big dude. I mean, I don't know. I've been told the story. I don't remember, but I always think Darth Vader. He's that kind of guy. Went over there, was talking to him. And he said something about the Class 1 winners, or I said something about looks like St. Louis is going to sweep. We're going to beat all the Kansas City teams. Ha, ha, ha. One of those conversations. And he goes, yeah, in Valley Park, my boys. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, because he's also the owner of J.J. Twiggs, right there.
Yeah, okay.
Priority Ferry.
Yeah.
Which is right in Valley Park area.
Yep.
I said, I forgot about that. Yeah, congratulations. He's like, I already talked to Coach. I told him bring those boys in on Monday. Pizza's on me.
That's awesome.
Now, not only does he have the best pizza in St. Louis metropolitan area for that style, because I think that there's 3 distinct styles of pizza.
Yeah.
But he's just that kind of guy. So like an institution or a restaurant like that, I'm going to promote that all day, every day. And I don't care where you're at. Go get the double-decker from Vader at J.J. Twiggs. Not because the pizza's that great, because it is. The dude deserves your patronage, because good people are rare.
That's true. Absolutely true.
So let me, we were talking a second ago. You mentioned your older daughter who was stepdaughter, and then you have biological daughter with your wife. You grew up in a house in which you had step siblings as well.
Yes. 2 sisters.
So
And I grew up in a biracial home. So my stepdad was Mexican.
So
By nationality.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe.
Yep.
I love Joe. Joe was the coolest dude.
He's He's an awesome guy. He really is.
When we were little dudes, like I remember him coming up and pre-COVID, he was the first one fist bumping. Yeah,
Right.
None of that elbow shit.
No, right. Yeah.
He wasn't going to shake hands because we were too. He didn't respect us that much.
Right.
But we got a little bit of a bump.
Right. But he's your bro, right? He's like he's a friendish kind of guy.
So Joe was with your mom when we when we were little kids. I remember going over there and growing up in Granite City. People of color in particular, they were the exception to the rule.
Yes.
That's Granite City.
It was
99-1.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Do you remember though, freshman year, sophomore year? You remember who student council president was?
Brett Ware was student council president for our freshman year.
Yeah, one of 2 African American kids in a school of 2,400. Kind of, I find that's a whole other episode in and of itself.
I have stories, but yeah.
But I remember going over the house, and first time I met Joe, I knew that I assumed he was Mexican. I was a little kid though.
Of course.
I don't
It was 7th, 8th grade or something like that, right? I mean,
and I remember right out of the gate, he was just kind of a bro, as I mentioned, fist pumping. When you look back, especially in today's environment, growing up in a biracial household with 2 sisters that were biracial as well, and how do you view that? Knowing the language and the demeanor and the toxicity and just kind of the general hatred that is kind of permeated or has come out of the closet. Do you think about your childhood more in today's environment, because of who you grew up with? I was wondering about this coming in today because I remember as a kid wondering if how you felt about it, because obviously Sandy and Earl were white bread, German, Scotch immigrants that
sure.
we were kind of cookie cutter.
Sure.
How do you look back upon that through the lens of today's kind of race ideology?
Well, I'd probably be in trouble for cultural misappropriation by dancing in fiesta dances at the Mexican Honorary Commission, which is the initials are MHC. So I called it the Hannigan Club, which caused all kinds of discrimination. He just did not like that, but in a fun way. But cultural experiences, because as you know, Lincoln Place is just, it was like, I want to say Hispanic, Mexican, Latino, whatever you want to call it, but basically that was a large demographic down there. But it was also in West Granite primarily.
And the Armenians.
And Hungarians were there before them, right? It was like a whole process. But like West Granite was kind of like...
It's where my dad grew up.
Right, but it was like a weird zone, right, in Granite.
The Croatians, the Mexicans. And
you only went there for trouble, right? I mean, West Granite was kind
tacos.
of like... exactly.
Ernie
Nannies, of course. But I did, in my opinion, looking back on it, I felt like Joe was discriminated against by people that were white that seemed more welcoming to me than they did him. Yeah. And that just might be my perception, but again, just kind of viewing it, like you could kind of feel it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if his responses to that kind of antagonized that situation, because maybe he was conscientious of it as well. But he had gone to because he went to St. Elizabeth for school, so he went to a parochial private school. And some of his classmates, I guess, had pointed out that he was the ink spot on the picture. Like he's the one, like Brett Ware, right?
Yeah.
So he's the one guy that stands out in the picture. He's the one that doesn't fit in, if you will. So I could only assume that he's hyper aware.
Did he have a mustache in grade school?
I think even then, right? He had that long, like Fu Manchu thing going on. But my sisters they're part of the new demographic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are a part of the, I don't want to call it accelerating, ascending demographic, but as we tend to know already, it seems like we're getting browner and we're getting more diverse. And these are empowered women. My sister owns a business in Blue Springs with her husband, who grew up like 3 doors down from me. And they do road construction stuff, so it's not like it's actually easy market, right?
Who'd she marry?
She married David Resnick.
Oh, yeah.
Remember Resnick's down the street?
Absolutely.
So they run a business that travels all around the country to do this work. My sister, Anna, is in Chicago, and she's a city clerk currently. Politically involved. She ran for Secretary of State.
Yeah, she's a power player.
She seems to be. She's still my sister. So I don't, I try not to involve her too much in her day-to-day jobs. But
it was really funny. The first time somebody I think somebody shared the post when she was running. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the picture and I'm like, yeah, really? Okay. That name's super familiar. And then I looked at the mutual friends. I'm like, what the fuck?
Right.
Yeah, I had no clue.
How they
I
grew
was
up,
super
yeah.
proud of her.
Yeah.
Weird.
No, I mean, but it's somebody from Granite City that's making it on a larger stage, right? And you're always cheering for anybody, but if you know them directly, it's a different thing. I may not always agree with my sister's politics in general. She tends to be farther left than me, but I respect her opinions and I respect her mind and her views. And what she's really after is just trying to make everything better.
Yeah.
And that's even in Chicago. She's developed some programs up there and worked with other people to develop the programs for more accessibility.
Well, the thing is, that she grew up in Granite City, right? So at the end of the day, somewhere in the back of her brain or in the frontal lobe, somewhere in that gray matter, there's a little bit of a GC bone in there.
Absolutely.
It's probably the leveling agent or maybe a little pragmatic tool, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you?
I mean, did you grow up in wealth? I mean,
No,
right?
not at all.
I didn't either, and that even makes it more remarkable, in my opinion, that she was able to come out of a falling city like Granite City, right? That was on the decline, and she still was able to get up and come out of it. As is my other sister.
Yeah,
immensely proud of them. Far exceed anything I've done.
Do you view? Did you realize as a kid that you were growing up, in a household or in a relationship, the family structure? Were you ever cognizant, or did you ever care, or did you ever notice, like, maybe those side eyes in town, like, oh, look at that couple?
A little bit, yeah, not too much, but
Because when we were little, it never came up, but later in life, I always wondered. I'm like, did he think about it?
yeah.
Because I never had to think about it.
No, I mean, I thought about it at first, primarily because of my family.
Yeah.
Not Joe's family, but my family was already established.
Yeah.
My dad left whenever I was 4, so there's a big gap there, and Joe filled those shoes, and it was pretty impressive. And that he would do it, stepping out of his cultural boundaries, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And my family was originally, like, the bulk of my family was from East St. Louis, so they'd gone through desegregation, basically white flight, right, trying to get out of there.
Totally.
And I can understand those things to a point, but to get them to say Black American as opposed to the dreaded N-word, it was a push. So there was already racism built in, and it took a while to kind of break that down and be more accepting. But if somebody's willing to step up, I mean, for anything, it's merit, right? Meritocracy is what we're really about. So anybody that's willing to step up, fill a void, help push something forward in a positive direction, they deserve a pat on the back and applaud. But generally speaking, like, if you see someone of color initially, especially in Granite City back in the day, like, it just sets off all kinds of things in your mind, I would assume, because of pre-programming, basically, right? You're sort of programmed to see the other as the other, and instead of accepting them on, again, their merits, like, what are they bringing to the table? What type of person are they? He was a coach. He's a dad. He worked he had his own business. He went to the union. He's tried all of these different things as well. So I mean, he's, again, great guy all around. Can't complain.
So union, are you in the union currently?
I'm not.
You were.
I was.
Painting?
Yes.
Painting drywall?
Painting, drywall,
just
finishing.
painting?
Yep.
Why'd you switch?
Lifestyle choice. Nothing against the union or the company I worked for, but shift work, travel,
right.
And they have methods to get you to comply, right? You will be compelled to give in, which is fine. But then my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 11, which was a complete shock because we just always preached like good health and trying to eat right as best you can and exercise and everything else. So I thought I needed to be there more for her because I also saw the toll it was taking on my wife and my family with my absence. It was noticeable. Just mentally, from a mental aspect, their health.
So do you operate solo? Do you got a small crew?
We're down to 2 other people other than myself.
Okay.
At our biggest size, we're like eight people.
So let's take a second and jump into the job market / econ world. Grade it. You've been doing this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Things good? Things bad? Yeah, on a A to F scale, if let's say 2012 and interest rates are 0 and everybody's buying and everybody's building,
right.
If that's an A++, where are we today, November, December 2024?
Solid A for sure, from what I can tell. I mean, the one of the reasons why we're able to go out on our own is because there was a glut of work and not enough people to fill those job spots. Is basically what I saw. Contractors, in particular, general contractors, finding good, reliable help, people to show up, people to do their job effectively, people, again, that will try. The union environment, does foster that for sure. They have a training program built in. They have continuing education. There is a craftsmanship and work level pace that it's a lot. I saw many people wash out. And how could I put it? But it's a grind of its own. But if you get efficient at what you're doing, like any job, it's not a problem, and you have to know the ins and outs, right? Like there's these unsaid rules that take place. You have to be able to kind of perceive and participate in any job market. I'm sure that you've dealt with. There's what is on the surface, and there's what's kind of below.
So when you hear right to work, what does that mean to you?
It means you're trying to splinter off people as individuals so you can bargain with them at the individual level and then basically crush their collective ability to get better wages, better benefits, better working conditions, whatever it is.
So along those lines, knowing that the Republican Party in particular, I mean, is it literally in their national platform to push right to work as much as possible across, as many states as possible? Why do you think unions are leaning that way?
Towards right to work?
No, towards the Republican voting Republican.
Right. I don't know. That is, especially considering that in 2016, much to my sister's dismay, Anna, I was working in Quincy, Illinois on a union project, and I just started doing my own polling, like who's voting for whatever. And my basic argument would be if I gave you a resume with no names, no ages, right, no whatever, just put them out in front of you and said which one's more qualified for the job, you would probably pick Clinton at the time over Trump, just based on merits. That's the deep state thing, though. Everybody's getting away from it. I think people thought Obama failed to a degree, even though you're right. This is insanity, right? In my opinion.
Yeah.
So what I saw is that they just, again, the populist movement, but you're voting for a guy who routinely took union contractors to court, right?
To not pay them.
To not pay them.
Right.
Reneged on payments and just, crushed small businesses. There's all kinds of anecdotal things I've heard, and I assume that investigative reporters have actually verified some of these things. These are the stories I hear, correct? So, because you're going to get legacy media, mass media, and that's a whole. But
it's all bullshit.
It is. And then again, this time I'm not really sure why that's the case. I can tell you that in the union that you do carry some weight that's a little dead sometimes. And I can see where people want to kind of maybe, mitigate against that. I don't know what, but I deserve more because JB and I are in a crew and I produce, 1,000 more square feet a day than JB does. So I deserve more.
Yeah.
But maybe the person you're working next to isn't really skilled in that particular task.
Union scale and meritocracy aren't in the same sentence.
No, it's a socialization, right? But what you're doing is you're getting collective bargaining, which means that you actually want more membership so you can get more medical benefits, pension.
Quick break.
Yes,
We'll be
sir.
right back. All right. We're back.
So if I can finish that last little tangent there.
Yes.
So collective bargaining in general, and this is what seems to be an Elon Musk maneuver with Tesla, for instance, that he has been breaking strikes, basically refusing and firing lots of people and bringing new people in, which, that's his prerogative. But generally speaking, and this is just, again, my perspective, most union workers that I have been around and have had the privilege of working by on major projects, they bring something to the table that is difficult to find in quote unquote like the residential market. Like there's just, again, another level of competency and ability.
So you're touching on it. Most people just put construction in a bubble.
Absolutely.
And assume anything that is built requires a hammer and a nail and a paintbrush
And a low IQ. Right. Anybody can do it.
Is construction,
Right,
but
right.
the multi-story buildings, the white box, light commercial, the mixed use, residential to custom home to reno to everything, like all of these labors, it really, as much as it is the same skill set, it is a completely different population need. And I think that's where I think unions, one of the biggest problems unions have, in my opinion, is just identity, like messaging, because they don't differentiate between the two. And then when they do see smaller projects that frankly probably are okay going with non-union contractors, like, don't put the stupid inflatable rat out there. It makes you look so pathetic.
Petty, right? Makes you look petty. Yeah.
Yeah, because the people driving by, let's say it's I don't know, be a bad example, but a Culver is being built and there's a rat, inflatable rat. Well, you know what? I want my butter burger to be cheap, and
well, that's true. But this goes back to something else. And like, should you really have that kind of accessibility to that type of food on that scale? No.
That's a whole
right. But this is America, right?
We're going RFK.
Well,
let's do it.
But this is America, like that. I'm entitled. I should get what I want as much as I want when I want it without any interference. Even though the thing that I'm asking for and doing, and smoking is a classic example of this, even though I know it is a life diminisher.
Did you ever smoke?
Briefly, mainly cannabis.
Yeah.
But cigarettes, like I tried them for a while, like in high school, because everybody's smoking and drinking, right?
I'm going to bet it was either Tony Yurko or Ben Hicks.
It was actually Mark Brokaw of all people, but
he was a close third.
But we were all in the same car basically. So, but the first time I inhaled, and my grandparents smoked, so I just had like I just did not like it, just the smell and everything else. But I was like, oh, it's got to be cool. Got a total head rush, turned green, gave my pack of cigarettes up. I'm done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's that East 27 thing. Surprised it wasn't Marlboro Reds out of the gate.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, because those are cool. And they're only $2 a pack back in the day.
Yeah, see, my dad was West Granite, so it was all like menthol.
Oh, wow.
It was awful. He smoked all the way up till the end, like literally 3 days before he passed.
I admire his commitment.
He was committed.
Yeah.
It probably was the thing that killed him, but, I don't know.
Well, they always say it's contributors, right? It's maybe not the silver bullet, but it's definitely exasperating all kinds of other issues, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a money multiplier for health. It's going to make everything worse, outcomes worse.
So let's talk about health a little bit, because I passed not judgment, but I recognize your socials and the sandwich shops and and the food and everything else, and then the other split screen in your digital life is your physical activity, jiu-jitsu, and posting grappling classes with Matt Hughes, right?
Sure.
All this other stuff, and so you clearly are fit. I want to ask your opinion. This is getting back into the political realm on the RFK presence in our national conversation. As the FDA proposed FDA chair, or whatever his title is going to be, if he gets through.
Human Health Resources.
Department of Human Health and yeah. Something like, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Cabinet guy.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw out a few terms and then you kind of spitball back. Anti-vax, whalehead, dyes, bone marrow or beef broth or whatever. Like, when you think of RFK Jr. and what his role today, what does it make you think is somebody that appears to like a lot of good food? Maybe you might not eat a lot of it, but you take pictures of a lot of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And you work out a lot. Where does he come into play in this conversation?
Well, I mean, again, how far back do you want to go? Is this just a shock therapy to scare everybody into action? Because this is how I also view Trump to a degree, is that, I'm going to do this crazy thing, but sometimes he does. So you don't know what you're going to get. So everybody that's trying to predict what it's going to happen. So is RFK part of that, where he's like almost like a shock troop? He's just trying to get people to start moving so he doesn't have to do much. What's your take on New York limiting like size of fountain sodas? I mean, what's your take on how much Golden Corral should we have? What's your take on unnecessary dyes in food? Which, okay, but vaccines seems like it's a pretty shut case.
Yeah. Well, the thing about vaccines is, like, look, at the end of the day, we have charts. Mm-hmm. We have charts that show over time, starting in roughly 1920, 1930, 40, and you have polio and chickenpox and all these other things, and you see the chart go down to 0 or sub 1%. The common denominator, vaccines.
Right.
So that's not questionable. Now, when it comes to food, dyes and palm oils and all these other things, or high fructose corn syrup, right?
which is a lobbying group by the Farm Association.
It's corn farmers.
Yep.
You know, so I get that because you go anywhere in the world. I mentioned earlier that I've had the privilege and honor really to travel a lot, and you go to these other countries. And you look at the plate of food as it comes out. And it could be like if you're in Italy and you get this big plate of pasta and there's cheese all over it. And for some reason, you just don't feel as heavy, right? You know, maybe it's the red wine. I don't know. But,
might help.
you know, or you go to France and here comes steak and fries. And you're just waiting to feel fat. And you don't. You know, and it's all these little things. And your breakfast comes out and it's whole milk and it's real oranges and all this shit. And you just don't feel as bad. Then you come home and you eat theoretically the same stuff. You don't feel as good. So I think that like just simplistically, and I get it, and you pointed it out. It's lobbyists. It's money. It's always about money. Are you kind of excited for the prospect of what RFK might? Maybe not necessarily what he can do because he's going to be extremely limited given the way that things work. But do you feel that it's good that somebody like that is at least bringing this subject matter to the forefront?
Awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. And then I'll ask you about Europe. So whenever you're having these meals and not feeling fat, are you doing more walking?
Absolutely. It goes, did you ever see The Blue Zone? Have you seen the show?
No.
Totally up your alley.
Okay.
Netflix. If you're listening, go on Netflix, The Blue Zone.
Is the Blue Zone about people that live in certain areas that tend to walk more, tend to socialize more, tend to live in like particular climates? And
yes, and yes.
Have 5 daughters and live longer? And
I've
heard of the Blue Zone in general.
Biathlete or some marathon runner, whatever. This guy, he did this documentary and he focused on 7 areas called Blue Zones. Highest percentage of individuals that live to 100 or greater.
Longevity, yeah.
And then he goes in and says, okay, what are the 5 things? Might be 6 things, or I don't even know. But point being, he breaks down what are the dietary factors, what are the community factors, what's the demo, what's the topography, you name it. Why are these people living longer?
Right.
And very little of it had to do with money. Was the thing that really stood out to me.
Sure.
And yet here in the States, I know where you were about to go with this.
Okay.
We don't exercise. We are a car nation.
Try and live in this country without a vehicle, a car that's your own, and go stand at a bus stop for 3 hours and catch a bus that's going to connect you to another bus. And right, I mean, this is
there's only maybe, I would venture 3 to 5 cities in America where you could legitimately live without a car.
Sure.
Chicago being one of them.
New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. And LA was actually designed to be a car city, supposedly. It was because the city was established after the advent of the automobile, where most of the East Coast cities were not, right? So my understanding, again, totally different traffic patterns too, right? Yeah. Like, have you driven in all these places? Like, I wouldn't even drive in New York. No.
It's totally gridded. It's easy to understand. Everything's north, south, east, west.
It is, but the rules of the road, it's so congested.
Yeah.
I'm like, Boston's easy. You just have to be more aggressive than the person you're driving against.
Well,
it's like a competition there. Chicago, a little more 50-50, right? It's not just aggression. There's a little bit of patience and aggression mixed in. And LA is just spread out, or California, but LA particularly just funny. Everywhere.
When you're driving in Chicago, it's funny because there's always the people, and I was one of those people when I lived there, that go into the far right lane, the bus lane, pull up to the red light, and you're gonna bust it so you can get into the.
You move left.
Yeah. But it's polite. You wave as you're doing it.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Midwest hospitality,
as opposed to Boston, where you're flipping the person off as you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, or you're
no offense to Boston,
or St. Louis, where you just go run the fucking red light.
Yeah, that's
and you have 2-year expired templates.
Absolutely,
God,
absolutely right. You can't pull people over like that anymore because it's it's not societally acceptable.
So let's talk. I started this conversation off where I kind of alluded to and asked you about your own personal North Star.
Going to take it back to RFK 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what do you think? Because we're talking microcosm and then we're looking macrocosm, right? Yeah, and we go in these little microcosms.
That's that ADHD I told you about.
It is, but it's so again, if you're walking more in general and getting more just general exercise, not focused like purposeful exercise. You're going to the gym, doing some curls, but you're just in your life, you're just moving around more in general. And I can remember a post on Facebook with you that you turned into a competition. I think you bought raspberries and blueberries and put them in the drawer. And we're basically saying, if I remember correctly, you're the parent, you buy the food. If you want to find out what they like, make it a competition. Here we go. Here, do you want blueberries or do you want raspberries? I think raspberries were winning at the time, right?
Yeah.
But I bet they ate the blueberries eventually.
Yeah.
Once the raspberries got deplenished.
Well, it's really funny because full credit to Kim. She's the one that was first to market in our household with the organic food mandate. Actually, at first it was a suggestion, and then it quickly became a mandate. So it is an autocracy in our family.
As it should be.
But I think, as it trickled downhill to our kids, that, everybody wants to empower their kids, especially when it comes to food. And I believe it's primarily due to they just don't want confrontation in so much that, hey, what do you want for dinner, kid? Well, I want chicken strips or hot dogs or whatever. And they're just making it easy. Well, you can still make health easy or healthier easy. Change the options. You just, whatever your fridge is filled with, you just change the options.
That will become normal, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to something that's abstract.
And you might like this too from a health standpoint. How do you work your way around a complete lack of interest in going to the gym due to time or maybe just being lazy, which are both kind of my calling cards. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, no, 15 years ago maybe, Kim and I, post-wedding, we had huge gifts, dinner sets, Noritake plates and app plates and, 17 pieces per serving. We got all that shit. And, 90% of it just sat in the cabinet. We had our dinner plates, which were, I think the diameter was maybe 16 inches, a typical American dinner plate. Something happened. We were walking through Crate and Barrel and saw the little rectangular app plates that are maybe, 7-8 inches across. And I literally said to her, I said, hey, because we were trying to streamline a lot of our shit. I said, what if we just bought those dishes? And the end result was we bought them. We bought like 8 so we could have 8 plates. We weren't thinking in terms of portion. We were just thinking in terms of like they look cool.
But it restricts the amount of portions.
It
right?
restricted the portion control.
Yeah.
So the amount of food that we were cooking went down. The amount that we were eating went down because we've all heard the story. Like if you're not full, wait 2 minutes, wait 4 minutes, and you will be full. Because most of us are just like it tastes good, tastes good, tastes good, tastes good. Oh my God, now I'm full. Right.
Not only am I full, I'm stuffed. Right. Like,
what do you do? What do you do to stay fit from a dietary standpoint? Are you super cognizant of it? Are you pro? Is it normal to you at this point? Or do you continually work on what you're buying, what you're cooking? And is everybody in the house on board with it? Because that's the other issue a lot of households have. You got a whole bunch of, quote, unhealthy individuals, and one person wants to make a change. The other 3 or 4 are like, fuck you.
So your portion control, I noticed that with my stepdaughter in particular, became very aware that she was getting an adult size plate, and then the portions were adult size, and then she's being criticized for not finishing her plate. This was mainly from her grandmother, but it was kind of carried over in the home because that's where my wife grew up. So, but I'm like, you're forcing her to eat the same amount of caloric intake as you are a full-grown adult.
Yeah.
So what do you think the result's going to be? And she started putting on some weight, and she was a little bit unhealthy, and then we started just changing it over. We started making some adaptations, like, hey, you can't have McDonald's, we can have Subway. I don't know how much better Subway is, but it seems like a healthier choice overall.
I think Subway's 20 times healthier than McDonald's, even if the science proves it's not, because the placebo is what it is.
In part. And I think, again, you're just not getting the fried and sodas. We started limiting soda intake, right? We started just all these things. Then we started getting her into swimming and things like this. Again, this was a slight roadblock with her dad, but this is adults being too self-absorbed. So they're really just kind of thinking about their own lives, and the kids are kind of an accessory, right? They have, these jobs to go to, they have these social events to go to, all these things they want to take care of. If your kid's not your priority, then you're probably not going to make a better version of yourself. And there's no guarantee they'll turn out better than yourself. But that, to me, is the end goal, is that generationally, this is the American dream, right? that your kids will be better than you were, and they should be across the board. They should be healthier. They should be more engaged. They should be whatever. So the plate control is a big thing. Then more home cooked meals, and then no specialized meals. Like, this is what we have. You eat these things occasionally already.
We're not a short order diner here.
And I do that to an extent, but like, it has to be within reason, right?
Yeah.
So I think those things are important. So then physical exercise is something I've been doing consciously for a long time, and I've tried all kinds of different things. But what I found worked best for me was not going to the gym and just running on a treadmill or standing in front of a mirror, knocking out those sets of bicep curls. What I found was skill development. So I played some inline hockey, which I really enjoyed with my team, and that's a whole nother thing there. That's why sports is a great analogy, because you may be a great individual player, but if you do not have a good team around you, you will never excel. You just be a great individual player, but your team won't accomplish much. So you have to find, there's a book I read, it's called From Good to Great. And basically a guy talked about a bus. You get everybody on the bus, and then you have to arrange the seats. People may not even be in the right seats. Now, if you try a couple different seats and it's not working, they might be on the wrong bus, and that's okay too. But if you're not willing to, again, adapt and change, then what is it? So jiu-jitsu, it's easy. My crew's there. I know Mo. We're kind of like family to a point without talking much, which is great.
Do you get more satisfaction out of hitting or getting hit?
Both, but I gave up hitting, so that's why I don't kickbox anymore. I'm not into concussions.
What is the difference between jiu-jitsu and grappling?
Oh, it's the same. It's just a specific niche.
Is grappling the Midwest term for jiu-jitsu?
It's just universal.
Farmers understand it a little bit better.
Well, because you get judo players, and that's a form of grappling, right? And you get wrestlers, especially. I know in the Midwest there's a plethora of them, but there's a lot of wrestlers across the country. So you get a lot of wrestlers coming in, and then it's a way to sort of level the playing field, especially with the gi. So you can have bigger people going with smaller people, older people with younger people, which is the other aspect. If you're not listening to people younger than you, then you're not paying attention to what's going on in the world and what's coming up behind you. So I believe in empowering youth. Like, I may not be right, so tell me your viewpoint on it. We'll argue about it. And I bet I walk away with a different perspective than what I started with, and more understanding of where you're coming from and what the youth is facing. And I find this at work too. We hire kids from college, and they tend to inform me as much as I try and inform them. And I think this is part of the reciprocal relationship. But it seems like we've also gotten to the point, like, I'm older, I know better. And I just think that's a fallacy of logic. People very young, and I'll point to like Alexander Hamilton, who's running the East India Company at the age of 9. Yeah. Right. And again, meritocracy. Like, what are your abilities?
But shouldn't it be okay though, as we age, to not worry about the perception of feeling smarter, or actually being smarter, or being more efficient? Having more wisdom. Mm-hmm. Like, because I think, like, at some point, if you don't have confidence, right, everything it becomes gray. And one of the main reasons I wanted to have this conversation specifically and start the pod in general was I firmly believe that people are just not having enough conversations. I don't even care about the subject matter, at its core, because we see a sentence, we see a reply, and then we see a meme, and then we see a GIF, and it's over. Mm-hmm. That is not a conversation.
No.
That is like, go fish. I would rather play rummy or gin.
Bridge.
Yeah, right. Bridge.
Right. A strategic game.
That's
sophisticated.
Right? I like that little play on words there. Bridge. Play bridge. A bridge to better understand.
Exactly.
Do you feel you understand better today than you did? Well, this is going to sound like a Faces song, right? Ooh la la. I wish that I knew what I knew now when I was younger.
Of course.
Do you feel that in real time?
Youth is wasted on the young, right? I mean, yeah, I was a complete fucking idiot whenever I was younger, for sure. Especially when I look back on like my high school years and coming out.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Is this something you wanted to tell me for a long time?
No. I was remember because I was one of the idiots with you. And I've told my kids this story and they don't believe me. We would play Rock Wars over your house. Mm-hmm. 2 in front, 2 in back, or 2 in 1 if it was just the 3 of us. Mm-hmm. And then one day the rock didn't come back over because it plunked one of us on the head.
Somebody got in the head, yeah.
Yeah. And then Joe and Debbie had to deal with it.
Rock Wars were over.
It was over.
Yeah.
God, those were the days.
I know. They should have just given us helmets and safety glasses and everything would have been fine.
Well, those of us that were more on the west side of town, we had rocks. Those rich kids on the east side of town, they had jarts.
Well, they had to go get the landscaping rocks, not the ones from the alley that they paid.
Those are
slag
polished.
from
You're
Granite
right.
City Steel, right?
Dude, Mark, I've had a blast. Did you have fun?
I did. Are you good?
Oh, I'm always good.
Okay.
I tend to, again, I think I'm realizing this as I get older and having gone through what I've been through, pain and instances of loss or failure or whatever. You know what? Those are just that's a bigger wave on that boat ride. You know, it's just the whole smacks, and as long as the boat is solid, everything will hold up in the long run. And I feel like conversations like this, it's just all proving that the whole is solid.
It's the aggregate that makes you who you are, right?
And hey, you know what? When I put this through AI and they look for like clips, I'm gonna get flooded with sayings on this one. You had fun though?
I did, absolutely. And I totally appreciate you entertaining my notions of being a grand podcaster. But just in general, what I found was just engaging with you on social media is that you are trying to bring forth broader ideas and concepts as opposed to being locked in an echo chamber or confirmation bias, whatever term you want to use for today. Again, this is very important, and distinguishing again between arguments, which are forms of logic, right? You're going to make an inference, it's predicated on, versus we're fighting, right? And these are all opinions. Some things are not opinions.
Yeah.
Some things are factual.
I find fighting fun sometimes though.
Of course, it's
In a
why I
weird
trained
way.
jiu-jitsu. I love fighting. I love fighting.
I guess I should. Well, yeah, no, I'm not going to train.
No, but
Yeah.
case in point is that jiu-jitsu has completely permeated the
Yeah.
culture. Whenever I started jiu-jitsu 20 years ago, you had to have the secret handshake, and you had to know a guy that knew a guy that knew a guy that had
It
a
was in an
garage.
alley. Yeah.
And but it's something drawing people together. But again, it's just one more delineation that like, well, you don't do jiu-jitsu, bro. So like, you're not a Roganite.
Well, I tell you what we're going to do if you've got time afterwards. You were talking about Sammy's sandwiches and you have bias. We might bounce out of here if you have time. I'll take you to a Joya's bias.
Okay.
You ever been to Joya's?
No.
Listeners beware. Joya's hot salamis en route.
I will post if I need to.
Mark Hannigan, thank you.
I appreciate it, JB. Thank you
Good
so
to see
much.
you, bud.
You too.
Take care.
All right.